an important and impactful role in many of our lives, especially over the past 12 months, with most or all of us being stuck at home and in need of accessing almost everything virtually. We've used Zoom to learn, to connect with friends, families, loved ones, neighbors, church groups, book clubs, even our doctors. It has become an incredibly important tool in our daily lives. So it is with great pleasure that we welcome Harry Moseley, the Chief Information Officer at Zoom, to get set up today.
Thank you, Lawrence. It's a pleasure to be here, and hello to everybody out there in the ether, so to speak.
So Harry, you've had an incredible career. Let's ask you to share a little more. What exactly does a Chief Information Officer do?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's I always say, so when people ask me hard questions and I give them I give them an answer, and they say, "How do you know that?" And I say, "Well, I am, the CIO, the Chief Information Officer. So, I stands for information, so I'm expected to have it." But in, the typical role of the CIO is, fully encompassing everything to do from a technology and security perspective. So it's the network, it's the desktops, it's the data centers. Obviously now it's more cloud oriented. It's the technology architecture, it's the application portfolio, it's the productivity tools. So it's anything that is related to the technology world. That being said, I think that there's a lot of, sort of people mix up CIO and CTO. So Chief Information Officer versus Chief Technology Officer. The technology officer is typically more associated with the technology architecture and framework for an organization or an entity, or in a software company like Zoom, more focused on the actual product architecture. But I think that the role has changed a lot over the last 5 or 10 years, because technology has become so much more ingrained in literally everything that we do. So no one can, no organization can run today without technology, which is why I said many years ago, every organization is a technology company that focuses on financial services, or focuses on professional services, or is in the automotive industry, etc. Without the technology functioning, the company grinds to a halt. So that's why I often say every company is a technology company. But the role of the CIO and the CTO changed a lot over the last 5 or 10 years, because the tools have become much more user focused, so to speak, and everybody's technical literacy has become much more familiar with technology. So the role of the CIO, CTO is to put platforms in place that enable people to get their jobs done.
And what brought you to your current role as CIO of Zoom at this point in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember a couple of years back being interviewed by Forbes, and in a fireside chat situation, and in the introductory remarks, it's like people, the interviewer was talking about my career and said, "But Harry had a really bad failure," and I was thinking, "Oh, what's that? We didn't talk about that in the briefing." And then he said, "Harry failed at retirement, because clearly he's not retired." And so I retired in December of 2017 because I wanted to do something completely different with the rest of my life. Well, not completely different, but it's like I didn't want to run a large technology organization. Then I got approached by Zoom to join the company, and I remember talking to Eric Yuan, our CEO and founder, who is just a terrific man, really smart, and excuse me, in multiple ways, and very humble. And he and I were chatting, and and I remember saying to Eric, it's like, there's so much competition out there. why did you start a company to focus on video conferencing, communications, etc.? And he said, well, it's a good question. It comes down to the fact that, there are other alternatives out there other than Zoom. To say they don't work is not true. They do work. To say they work well is also not true, because they don't work well. And this is true when I reflected back on my career, be it at KPMG, Blackstone, Credit Suisse, UBS. We took great technologies and we stitched them together to try to create a simple, seamless, frictionless experience for our employees, for our professionals. And, it worked, it just didn't work well. And so Eric's vision was always about creating this seamless and frictionless UCaaS, Unified Communications as a Service platform. So that was one. Two was, looking at the technology architecture that Zoom had been built on, radically different to everything else out there. I thought, that's interesting. And I liked Eric and I liked the culture of the company. And I thought, okay, well, this wasn't part of the retirement program, but I could have some fun here and I can help Eric and the team be successful. And it sort of fits in with one of the things that I wanted to do as part of my retirement program, which is, sort of help people wherever I can. And so I'm helping a lot of people at Zoom, but by default, helping our clients, helping their employees, helping their clients. And when you look at sort of the mission of Zoom, our mission is all about empowering people to accomplish more. And that sort of, that hit a chord with me. I liked the mission of empowering people to accomplish more. Not more meetings, Lawrence, but empowering people to accomplish more, empowering educators to be able to educate more children, empowering medical professionals to treat more patients so they can have a better quality of life, empowering bankers to work with their clients so they can build better companies, employ more people, etc. And, so it's all sort of like this building forward, if you will. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And clearly Zoom has become a household name, particularly over the past year and during the pandemic. And it must have been an exciting and busy time at the company. What has the pandemic meant for growth at Zoom over the past year?
Yeah, so it's, if we go back to December of 19, so a little over, what's that, 18 months ago. So yeah, it's like hard to believe we're at the end of May, my friend. So it's like 18 months ago, we were, hosting, north of 10 million daily meeting participants. And then suddenly we looked over our shoulder and like, oh my God, March of 2020, we were hosting over 200 million daily meeting participants. And then April, and we thought 10 million was kind of like a lot, 200 million, like, oh my God. And then in April, it got to sort of over 300 million daily meeting participants. And the utilization of the platform, which we measure in annualized meeting minutes, went from 100 billion in January of 20 to over 3 trillion annualized meeting minutes. So that's over 30 times the growth in October. So it's just been, and when you look at the financial results for the company, if I recall, Q4 was $882.5 million for the quarter revenue, which represented 369% year-on-year growth. So this and our employee count, when I joined the company in March of 18, we were north of 800 employees. Fourth quarter, we were north of 4,400 employees, of which, sort of a good third of those were hired during the pandemic period. So it's never been to a Zoom office, never met another Zoom employee in person. And it's been a hell of a, it's been an amazing ride. Every year has, in its own right, has been an amazing ride for a set of reasons. And I'm super excited as I look into sort of 2021, because this is kind of, 2020 was, excuse me, every organization, every company, around the world, every industry, moving to work from anywhere as opposed to an office, right? Everybody, ran to their homes or ran to their parents' homes or what have you. And now, now everybody's getting ready to come back out, go back into the office. And I think that the office environment is going to be dramatically different to what it was pre-pandemic. So super excited to sort of watch that journey and help make that journey a reality.
So with respect to the journey, how would you compare the mission and vision at the beginning of the company with what it is now? Is it similar? Is it different? Has it evolved?
Yeah, I think, excuse me, sorry about that. Yeah, so I think by and large, the mission and vision for the company is very much the same. So the mission I already talked about, it's empowering people to accomplish more. That's still very much core to us. And our vision is all about how do you make the virtual world as good, if not better, than the in-person world. And so very focused on that. And I can, sort of share a couple of examples as, one of them being, events. You're running events. This is actually an event. There are, sort of, and we saw how over the last 60 months, all the in-person events pivoted to be virtual events. And so now the world is sort of starting to get back to that new normal, and events are starting, there's in-person events are starting to spin up. Some are starting to say, we're only going to do it in person. A lot of them are saying we're going to do virtual. I was invited to do a keynote presentation in Florida at the end of June. I said, I don't know, I'm not ready to go to Florida for an event in June. They said, well, would you consider, doing the keynote over Zoom? And I was like, let me think about that. Sure. And so we launched our, sort of Zoom events platform. And just to give you an example of how this is making the virtual world better than the in-person world. Imagine, Lawrence, we go to an event in Florida. It's very nice. The weather's good. It's like, a nice hotel somewhere. And now we're in the auditorium and there's a presentation going on, right? And I see you sitting in the audience. I could go over and talk to you and disturb others. We could go outside and have a conversation over a cup of coffee, but now we're missing what's going on inside. So that's the physical. That's the way the physical would operate. The virtual operates in a similar sort of fashion. Now you got the auditorium, you got the main stage, you got the presenters, and now I see Lawrence is here at the event, and I can tap you on the shoulder in a virtual world. And then you and I go off to like a private room where you and I can see each other, talk to each other. But as well as doing that, we can still see the main stage. The volume for the main stage drops down, so we can still hear a little bit in the background about what's going on. We can grab a cup of coffee and have a nice conversation. Then suddenly we realize that, Michelle's giving the keynote presentation. Let's listen in on that now, and let's pick up this conversation afterwards. Sounds good? Sounds good. So we close this down. Now the volume comes back up and we hear and see Michelle. So it's kind of like that's, sort of the notion of making the virtual event as good, if not better than the in-person event, because you wouldn't be able to see what's happening in the auditorium in the physical world.
Harry, what do you see as being the difference between sort of the business usage for Zoom versus the consumer usage? Obviously, the consumer usage has grown incredibly. What does that look like, and what do you think has sort of driven any change there?
Yeah, well, Zoom was built for the enterprise. That's, we were clearly built for, organizations of all sizes, global organizations, really large firms like HSBC, et cetera. It's like just really, really large organizations, as well as SMB. We saw early in 2020 about how consumers really latched onto the Zoom platform for doing yoga classes, et cetera. We made the decision to give our software away to schools for free. We have over 125,000 schools in 25 countries running on our platform. Very proud about being able to support education like that. And I think the biggest reasons behind that is, sort of based upon sort of the 5 core principles that Eric founded Zoom on. So one was ease of use. It's kind of like, it's just simple to use. It's it's a very simple interface. It's a very simple experience, whether you're joining a meeting, a webinar, a large meeting. It's like it's got the consistent user experience. We have 6-year-olds to 96-year-olds and everything in between using the platform. So that's one. 2 is incredible reliability. We had this session scheduled. I was asked to join at sort of 5 to the hour. I had no, I was on another meeting up until then. I had no hesitation. It's like I never get stressed about it. I know that when I click the link, I'm in the meeting. Bingo, it just works, right? So incredible reliability. Whereas sort of with other platforms, there's always I need to log on earlier to make sure that it just works. 3 is we've always been innovating at speed and scale. And we continue to innovate. We are the first with virtual backgrounds, motion backgrounds, content as your background. Now we've got this thing called Immersive Views. So it's kind of like fun, sort of where you can set it up as a fireside chat. If you're doing a presentation, and you can set up everybody in an auditorium so you can see people laid out. If you're doing a classroom setting, you can even customize your own setting. A friend of mine downloaded an image of a private jet, and we were all sitting in, sort of the virtual private jet having a conversation. That was kind of fun. And then 4th is pricing. It's kind of, when you look at the retail pricing at, sort of $14.99 a month, it's about the price of a cup of coffee once a week. And that's what it costs, so you can connect with your friends and family around the world with reliability and good quality and share photos of the kids and family and your pets. That's not a bad price. And then even less for the enterprise. And then, sort of, privacy and security. And we, sort of, whilst we had our challenges, we pivoted the entire company, and now we're regarded as the leader in this space from a privacy and security perspective. So it's very cool.
So Harry, obviously, our community of older adults does think a lot about security. How would you suggest to them that video is very safe, comfortable, and easy to use? Is there anything that they need to be worried about?
Well, I think that is, sort of, it's, using things like passwords and waiting rooms and things of that nature are sort of, the normal protocols that you follow. And it's like, when you think about, Lawrence, when you think about the physical world, it's not like we leave the front door open and somebody knocks at your door, or doesn't even knock at the door. They just don't. People don't go up to somebody's front door, open it, and just walk into their house.
Right.
So why would you set up a virtual meeting that anybody could just join without sort of introducing themselves or being admitted? So, it's the notion of, when I go to bed at night, I don't just lock the front door, I put the alarm on. So I think there's normal protocols. We have passwords, we have waiting rooms. There's a multitude of different controls in place, and you can set those up by default. And so if you haven't, I would advise people that they do that. And it's easy to set up, and it's easy for people to use. And passwords are encrypted and part of the link for joining meetings. So it's just not hard. So those are some. I would recommend people follow the protocols.
Yeah, thank you for that. I want to share a few of the quotes from our community. Before I do, I just want to remind everybody, if you have a question for Harry, please put it in the chat, and we'll try to get to it if we can. Harry, here's a couple of great quotes, and then you'll probably have some of your own to add to this. But During the pandemic, using Zoom has enabled me to visit family and friends, participate in numerous learning opportunities, attend church, and do volunteer work. So that was a cool quote, I thought. Another was, it has allowed me to stay connected to my family. This was so important during the pandemic. I'm a widow and live alone in a remote area. Zoom took care of this for me. So pretty cool thing to hear. Last one, as an introvert, it has helped me interact with others in a much more comfortable way. I am more engaging, interested, and not as anxious. Also quite interesting, because you can see that there's some calming and almost the socialization ability or enablement here is making people feel happier, more comfortable, more included. So it's wonderful. So to you, Harry, how have you seen Zoom impact people's lives, and is there any stories that you might be able to share from your side of Zoom?
I love that comment from the lady commenting about sort of how she's been able to connect with her family. It's like, my best friend lives in Portland, Oregon, and his mother-in-law lives in Dublin, Ireland, and she too lives alone. And I remember how Michael was telling me that they have in the community where she lives, they were hosting like twice daily Zoom meetings for people, sort of elderly people who were living alone, and his mother-in-law Myra would do up her hair and get her makeup on, and she was so excited about sort of connecting with her friends on Zoom. It was kind of like the highlight for her day, and that's very warming. There's many other examples. Another friend of mine, his child suffers from Down syndrome, and so they used to take their daughter to a care center during the day, and that was very stressful for the daughter and very stressful for my friend and his wife, and stressful for the caregivers because there was such a resistance to going to the care center. But when the care center closed, they pivoted to Zoom, and they saw a huge change in the daughter's behavior because now she was joining her friends and caregivers over Zoom from her home, and so there was no stress in getting in the car and having to go to the center. So that was great. There's so many other stories. It's. I remember reading, like I think it was April or May of last year, an article in one of the New York papers, and the headline read, "Social distancing, you must be joking." Never did I think I would know so much about my colleagues I've learned in the last few weeks. I've been in their homes, I've been in their kitchens, their living rooms, their dining rooms. I've even been in bedrooms and bathrooms. I've met their kids, I've met their parents, I've met cousins, I've met their pets, I've met dogs, cats, rabbits, and even some snakes. And all of this sort of this familiarity that we have with going into people's homes in a virtual world like that, and sort of getting to know the families, brings people much closer together from a working perspective, because it sort of takes the edge off the relationship, if you will. And we all understand it's like we're humans, we got kids, we got emotions, dogs bark, it's and then there's lots of other funny examples. I remember I was talking to one of our clients, and it was a conversation just like this, and she was talking to me, and then she goes, Billy, the FedEx guy, quick, stop him before he drives off. So the FedEx guy was here. She had a return package that she wanted the FedEx guy to take with. So it's kind of, it's fun things like that. Oh, and another one I love to talk about is, a board meeting. CEO's making his executive presentation, and a wife comes into his office and says, "I need you to hold the baby." And he goes, "Sweetheart, it's like I'm in the middle of a board presentation." She goes, "That's an answer to a different question. Take the baby." So now he's sitting there in front of the camera holding the baby, and nobody says anything, and the meeting just continued. My dog often will wake up from his nap Yep, he's over there fast asleep. He'll wake up. He's a puppy. He's a pandemic puppy. We got him about 14 months ago. He'll wake up from his nap. He wants a lot of attention, and he'll like climb up on my lap and just sit here and look at people on the camera, and this is fun.
Yeah, those are great stories. Harry, what do you think's next for Zoom? If you were to, look out a year or 2 years, what do you think's out there?
Yeah, so very excited about the hybrid model, very excited about sort of getting people back in the office, and, sort of people getting back to socializing. I think that, when I look at the last 16 months, Lawrence, I think, it's been hard for a lot of people. It's been hard, very hard for many people, and my heart goes out to all those who've lost friends and family members. It's very difficult to accept what has happened in so many families around the country and the world. That being said, it's like, it's great that people are getting vaccinated, and so it allows us to, hug our family again, hug our friends again, be able to go to a restaurant, go to a movie, go to a ball game, go to a picnic. So very excited about all those things happening. From a Zoom perspective, very excited about the hybrid world, getting people back in the office. It's going to be a virtual, it's going to be a hybrid model, I think, sort of employees have really liked, in many cases, the work from home. Gives them great flexibility, allows them to be here to see the kids off to school. Hopefully all our kids are getting back to school really soon, because I think it's in-person. Virtual teaching is fine, but in-person teaching is better, because kids need to be together, learn social norms, learn how to react and how to work together. And people like being at home, with their dogs, like I just mentioned. I love having my puppy with me. I don't think that Metro North is going to look too kindly if everybody starts bringing their dogs on the train to work every day. Taking care of an aged parent at home, it's a great flexibility from that perspective too. On the other hand, employees don't want to be at home 5 days a week, so they want some sort of flexibility in terms of the work-life balance. It's kind of interesting, Lawrence, when you think about over a year ago, we used to have, before, in the pre-pandemic world, we used to have to get permission to work from home. Now we have to get permission to work from the office. So I think that's rather fascinating. And then employers have become very, sort of much more agnostic about where they're hiring. 60% of jobs are advertised as being remote. So we're not really, we're not necessarily hiring in a particular city. It's more about sort of the time zone that's important now, not so much the city. And, I mentioned our Zoom events platform. Very excited about how we're going to support the, virtual events in the forward-looking time. So those are, and we've got a suite of new features that we're bringing to the Zoom platform over the, that we've recently introduced to make the office environment safe for people. Things like virtual receptionists and monitoring, the metrics on the floor, from people count or temperatures, voice activation of Zoom rooms and things of that nature. So super excited about the future. Yeah.
Terrific. I'm going to pull a few questions out of chat and out of comments, and run these past you, Harry. Bonnie and Mike asked a question. They're teachers and wonder what changes might be considered to the Zoom platform to make it even friendlier for folks to teach and learn things.
Yeah, I think that, sort of one of the, I think one of the challenges from a teaching perspective, well, there's a couple of challenges, right? First off, when we go back like over a year ago, and everybody was, sort of working from home, I think that there was an expectation, and Bonnie and Mike probably are nodding their heads if I could see them. There was an expectation that we could send, the teachers home and the students home, put a piece of glass in front of them, give them a camera, give them a microphone, give them a set of speakers, and they could conduct class just the way they were when they were in the classroom. That's not true at all. It's like, in-person teaching and in-person learning are very different to virtual teaching and virtual learning. You got to have it's a different program. It's the same outcome, but it's a different methodology. And I think there was a lot of learnings that people had in terms of the virtual world. There was a lot of, I think that, I'm not a teacher, but, teaching also requires the ability to be able to mark up documents and draw things. And I think that, people figured out how to do that by having tablets tethered to Zoom and things of that nature. So very excited about what we're doing in our whiteboarding space. So the whiteboarding will be released a little bit later in the summer. Our first release, you can do some whiteboarding today, but it's a little challenging. Our new whiteboarding platform that we'll release later in the summer is going to be very helpful, I believe, to teachers. The other thing that we're doing is what we call the democratization of meetings. So if you see, if you look into if there's a bunch of people in a room and they're on video, you typically see them as a single tile and you can't engage with them. So the ability, we're using artificial intelligence to stream the people out as individual tiles, so you can have that direct connection and read those nonverbal cues. And we say video is the new voice. That's the verbal, the nonverbal cues, and I can see you're nodding. So I think that's really important. If I was teaching, on a remote basis, I want to be able to see everybody. I want to be able to see the nonverbal cues. I want to be able to see that the students are engaging, and I want the students to be able to engage with me as well. So, I think we got some more on that coming.
Yeah, I mean, and to add to that, Harry, we see, learners, once they can see each other, they've taken perhaps several classes together, they connect and they come back and take classes together, right? So it becomes sort of a sense of community that then grows. And I don't think, we initially expected that when we started Get Set Up. We thought we were providing sort of a learning environment, and it's really turned into a place where people can connect. And the YMCA is a great example, because we provide classes to a lot of their learners. Folks that would go to a local YMCA might have never met each other, but because so many of them are taking classes together, they meet each other in our class, and they're all from, say, the Houston Y or a YMCA in Colorado. So they had to go online to meet each other and connect, even though they all go to the same local Y.
Yep. My wife told me of a great use case, and she's also in education, that teachers found in the virtual world that they weren't able to exercise in the physical world. So there's always, like, the teacher is always happy to meet one-on-one with one of the students, right? So sometimes that's just it's a private session between the teacher and the student. What they found was that in the virtual world, other students wanted to participate in those one-on-one sessions, not from a dialogue perspective, but just to listen in. Because if the student was having a challenge with a particular topic, they wanted to listen in, not in a bad way, not to understand why this particular, their fellow student was having an issue, but they wanted to understand what the issue was. And as a consequence, they were able to listen into the dialogue between the student and the teacher having this one-on-one conversation about this particular topic, that they didn't realize they too had the same problem. And so they were able to listen in on this in a virtual format, and so the learning was a continuum. I thought that was pretty cool.
It is very cool. And when you think about sort of being able to use Zoom to bring together a community of learners, it is so much more interactive than simply trying to learn by watching a video on YouTube, right?
Yeah, and it also it's like, talking to many higher ed, we got lots of the, I think it's up in, I can't remember the number, US universities on the Zoom platform. They are really excited about the virtual world too, in the post-pandemic world, because what they found is they can invite professors from all over the world to do a guest lecture. And the professor doesn't have to fly in from Australia or fly in from London. They can just, they can Zoom in for 45 minutes and that's it. And they can invite students from other parts of the world as well. So, I do believe that in-person learning is super important, but I think there's a place for doing this virtual learning as well. So.
Oh, you mentioned the global aspect of it, and that's another thing that has surprised us. We have Australian folks attending our U.S. classes. We have U.S. folks attending our yoga classes that are being run in India. It's
cool. It's so cool.
It is so cool that the sort of global nature of everybody being able to join classes from different teachers, different cultures, different time zone. It is really wonderful.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
So Shirley has a question. What do you see as the future of Zoom as a way to connect with others over the next 10 years?
I wish I had a good answer for that.
Right.
Where's my crystal ball when I need it? So again, it's sort of surely it clearly goes back to that vision and mission. We are so focused on that. That is like, this is what we do. When we go back to the pandemic world, we were really focused on sort of connecting the world, connecting people, making sure that they could connect, that they could, from a personal perspective and a professional perspective, and keeping their social norms to whatever degree they could in this virtual environment. But and equally important, making sure that countries could operate, making sure that global enterprises of all sorts, sizes, and shapes could function. And so we're going to continue on that. In terms of sort of 10 years is a long way out. It's like, if somebody said to me I'd be the CIO of Zoom 10 years ago, I would have said, you must be joking. But sort of, and then when you look at technology, you look at artificial intelligence, you look at machine learning, you look at augmented reality, virtual reality, IoT, 5G, and soon 6G. These are all technologies that we're still trying to figure out, quite honestly, how to leverage and how to use. We have figured out a lot, but I think that on a relative basis, we're only scratching the surface of how we're using these technologies. There's I read an article recently, about how manufacturing companies were looking to see how they could move more of their manufacturing into a virtual world, experimenting with 3D printers. There was an article in one of the newspapers recently talking about how a reporter took a tour of a factory in Oregon, but did it from the comfort of his home in Boston. And the CEO gave him a complete tour of the factory and all the automation and the robots in the factory, etc. So I think that there's I think we're only scratching the surfaces of all these things. You look at service management, you look at sort of people coming to repair, your appliance in your home. How can they do more diagnostics on that on a remote basis, so that when the technician comes, they can come with all the right parts, as opposed to having to come back, sort of 2 times, because they come, they do the diagnosis, they find out, oh yeah, your circuit board is being fried, so we need to order one. Well, why couldn't that diagnosis have been done on a remote basis, and things of that nature? So I'm excited about the future.
So just to pile on to my 10-year question, optimistically, we'd like to believe that in 10 years, 30+% of the coolest older adults in the world will be creating and sharing on Get Set Up using Zoom. How about that? How about
Sounds
that?
good to me. Sounds good to me.
There's a good goal.
Yeah.
One comment from Nick in our audience. So grateful for Zoom. It has literally saved lives. So that's nice to hear. Question from Bruce. I know we're getting down to our time here. We're going to wrap up in just a couple of minutes. But Bruce has a question. What do you see as the future for remote learning, and how does it evolve?
Yeah. So I think that sort of when I think about sort of distributed learning, I think that's going to, I think the format of that has to change. It's like it's shorter segments of learning, less in each segment and more segments. So I think that the notion when I'm not sure if you're talking about sort of the K through 12 or the higher education or professional learning. I think when I go back to my days of learning, there were long days in university, there were long days in school. I think that learning like that, I think I don't think that works in a virtual world. I think in the virtual world, it's more about sort of learning at certain points on an as needed basis, certainly in the professional areas, and shorter segments would be my recommendation.
Awesome. Harry, it's been wonderful having you here today and learning about Zoom and hearing about you starting your new venture later in life.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure being with you, Lawrence, and your colleagues and everybody else out there. And Lawrence, feel free to share my email with people if there's anything that I can personally do or Zoom can do to help you, help your family, help your company, help your organization. There's a quote I like to use, which is no ask is too big or too small. If you don't ask, you don't get in this life. So feel free.
What a wonderful offer. And to continue learning from Harry and Zoom, check out the zoom.us website and follow Zoom on social media. You'll be able to see these links in the chat, and we'll send them as part of our follow-up correspondence and notes from today's session. If you'd like a recording of this event, please email our support team at help@getsetup.io. If you're new to Get Set Up, we hope you've gotten a taste for what we do. We have over 400 online classes weekly, all designed for older adults, taught by older adults. These classes are free as we work with local governments and community and healthcare organizations who support their members by providing these classes. And I also want to draw attention to our Zoom-related classes on Get Set Up. If you like this event, one of our other classes might be ready and waiting for you too. So look for the link to sign up for these classes in the chat here on Zoom and on our live streams and at getsetup.org. Thank you to everybody who registered and attended. We loved all the great questions and comments. We apologize if we didn't get to all of them. We look forward to seeing all of you in a future class. Thanks, Harry. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.